So I've got with me the ProArt P16 from Asus, and this is a laptop aimed at creators. So people like myself that need a bit of power to edit videos or maybe Photoshop work, and it's got a screen for it. It's got a very color accurate and wide coverage screen. It's a 4K OLED, sadly only 60 Hertz this model, but it's up to 500 nits, HDR support, and being OLED, the blacks are super deep. They're certified with that. Backlit keyboard, huge touchpad, the Asus dial pad there, which is great for, again, say video editing or something, 90 watt-hour battery, and spec-wise really good. I've got the top spec version here. So 2 SSDs up to 4 terabytes of storage. It's got the RTX 4070 at 105 watts, and then the chip at 70 watts, the power limit, is that new AMD Ryzen AI. It is the 9HX 370, so super powerful with its 12 cores, 24 threads, and I'll show you what it's all about, this laptop, the ProArt P16, in this video. The ProArt P16 does weigh 1.85 kilos, but that isn't our total travel weight. That's just our laptop, and by the way, it's 14.9 millimeters, the thickness of it. But if I do add the power cable and our power supply, which is very small for a 200 watt power supply, that brings the weight up then to 2.42 kilos total travel weight. Looking at the build of it and the ports we do have, you'll see that right here we've got the new ProArt logo, and it's nice, it's simplistic, it's nice and small, and great that it isn't large, taking up the whole back of it. Now they've got this nano black coating, very resistant to fingerprints. If I press down on it, you can see doesn't seem to really smudge a tiny little bit, but this is not your typical material. So it looks good with that because it's really not picking up those smudges. You can just see a couple of them there. Now the hinge, can you open this up one-handed? Well, I do actually have it around the wrong way, but flip it around. That's because I wanted to show you that logo. Let's try that. Yeah, no problems. You can open that up one-handed. The hinge does feel good. And we do have cornering Gorilla Glass for the screen, and I'll show you that screen later on. Touchscreen with the pen support. So the touchpad, very large, goes right to the edge almost. You can see there's just a couple of millimeters gap right here. Backlit keyboard, that is very good to type on. So you get different stages with the backlight. This is the first one right now, the second and the third. So it is nice and bright. Got 6 speakers in total, so yes, you do get some sound out of this either side. This is not just for aesthetics. Power button, I like that they've done this. They've separated it away from where the delete key is, so no accidental key presses at all. And the touchpad, how does this feel? So it supports gestures. We have the Asus dial pad right here, which you can use with Adobe suite of applications. For example, if you're going to be using Adobe Premiere Pro, you can use it with that. You can assign it to all sorts of different apps. And typing on this keyboard, pressing down, it is a very good keyboard to type on. There really isn't any flex. And nowadays, most keyboards are very good, and this one is no exception. It is a good keyboard. About 1.5 millimeters of travel. So it's not as shallow as the ZenBook S16, which is 1.1 kilos. While still a good keyboard, I do prefer this one. I think it's got a better feel to it. The layout is also good, and this touchpad, fantastic. So 14.9 millimeters is the thickness. Not bad considering the hardware it's packing in this. Now, if you are into your NPUs, well, we've got, of course, with the Ryzen chipset, that 9HX 370, that has 50 tops, and then you get 321 additional tops from the NVIDIA RTX 4070. So pretty powerful hardware considering how thin it is. So this port right here, this one is USB, it's the type C, obviously, USB 3.2 Gen 2, and this is another Gen 2 port, but type A, and an SD card reader. Now, the SD cards will stick out halfway with this reader. They don't sit right in flush, unfortunately. Then we have DC into power, HDMI 2.1, and a full spec USB 4.0. Why I mean full spec? Because it supports power delivery, although you won't get the best performance because that's only up to 100 watts, I believe, and we're going to need a lot more to power the hardware inside. And it does support video out in a full 40 gigabits per second, and another USB Type A 3.2 Gen 2, 3.5 millimeter headphone jack with mic support. Support-wise, it is very good. There's plenty on here. No complaints from me, although I would have liked to have seen another Type C USB 4.0, but that's just me. It's otherwise really good here. So along the back here, we have some status LEDs, a bit of an odd location for them, and the cooling vents, exit vent right here. So they're calling this like stealth cooling because there's no big obvious vent on the back of it that's sticking out or on the sides. No, it's just here and it's kind of hidden. That's probably why they call it stealth cooling. Now there are 2 hidden screws at the top. They've just got these little tiny rubber covers on. Pull those both off, undo and remove all the T5 Torx screws, and then you can just pry off that bottom lid. And note right here, we have our dust filter. Very good idea for them to include that because dust is always an issue with laptops. Well, all PCs, even tower PCs. So 3 fans here, system, GPU, and CPU. There is our battery screwed into place, 2 SSDs, and right under this little cover here, you will find, yes, a Wi-Fi 7 card that you can replace, which is good. So they have a liquid metal here, so whatever you do, don't remove this because there's no need. They're using that Grizzly liquid metal on both of those, and we've got 105 watts from the GPU and 70 watts from our CPU. So a lot of power, a lot of cooling too, as you can see. 3 thermal transfer pipes right here and another one here that goes right through along and just down here. So there are 4 in total there, but we'll see later on what the thermals are like after all my testing and benchmarks. So let's take a look at this wonderful OLED panel that we have. It has just one flaw for me, and that is that it's 60 Hertz only, the refresh rate. So when you move things around on the screen, although I'm recording only at 30 frames per second, if I was recording at 60 or 120, you'd probably see this, but it's not super smooth. I'm used to 120 now on my desktop screens on laptops, and it's one thing I do miss with it. And is it going to be an issue for professionals? I really don't know. I don't think it is. I think people will still be used to 60, at least at this resolution 4K. So color gamut coverage is exceptionally good on this panel. 100% sRGB, NTSC is 97%, Adobe RGB 98, that is so good. And then P3, 100% color coverage there too, which is just amazing for this screen. It is bright, it is vibrant, touch support is accurate, it's very good. There's stylus support too with it, and the resolution is 3840 by 2400 because it's a 16 by 10 aspect ratio, but it still is 4K, well just over 4K. And if I did have the stylus, I would be able to test that out for you, but it is working, at least the touch, really well, no problems with it. And the screen, it goes back that far. That's the maximum. Will that be enough for stylus use? I think just, but it would be nice if it would lie completely flat, the screen, but it does not with the P16. Audio with our ProArt P16 is very good thanks to those 6 speakers. So the sample I'll play, yes, I know it's that same track I keep playing, but I do that for a reason, so you can compare it to my other videos. And I will be testing this at 80% volume, and we'll see what it sounds like. So that was quite good for a laptop there. We've got a decent amount of bass. You can hear the treble coming through. Mids are good as well. And I'd rate these as being above average, definitely for a laptop. So well done. If I was to nitpick, I would like them to be just a little bit louder than what they are. Here's our webcam that we get with the ProArt P16. So the quality of it is 1080p 30 frames per second. There is some grain to the image. It's not the best I've seen, but I wouldn't definitely call it not the worst either. It's okay quality we get with this webcam, and the microphones that you are listening to right now, they're the built-in microphones. Here in Windows with the ProArt 16, you will see that it does have, with the RAM, very quick speed. So that's 7,500 mega transfers, and we've got 64 gigabytes of that. So plenty of RAM there, and that's the maxed out version that I do have. So this is the limit here with the RAM. Now it is embedded RAM soldered on to the motherboard, so you cannot upgrade this at all. Now you see under system that it is running Windows 11 Pro, so that is good because it's a Pro laptop, ProArt 16, it does make sense. And I'll show you the Wi-Fi chip we do have with this particular model here. So you see that it is using the MediaTek one here, so the MT7925. And if you do happen to have a Wi-Fi 7 router, I don't yet, I haven't made that commitment just yet, but you will get some crazy speeds if you do happen to have one. Our fingerprint scanner, face recognition here with the webcam, you've got that on board, and you'll see here with the processor,
that it is listed now, that Ryzen AI 9 HX 370 24 times, because it's got the 24 threads and it does have the 12 cores, 5.1 gigahertz maximum turbo there. So it's a quick processor. And you'll see with the benchmarks, impressive when you do run this. This is the performance mode. So you hit function and then F. So you can go into whisper mode, which is very quiet. You have your standard mode and then performance. So these tests, all of the tests I'm showing you now, the benchmarks, the gaming, all in the top performance mode. The trade-off is you get a bit of fan noise, but look at this performance. Single core score here, really good. This is impressive now, the performance we are getting from that Ryzen AI 9 HX 370. Multi-core score, almost 15,000 points. So that is really good. And the big jump is that single core performance. And you'll see that with OpenCL, this is with the Radeon 890M graphics. Really good score. Very good. And then TimeSpy, now it's 105 watts that it is running this RTX 4070. So you will have other RTX 4070s out there with a higher power limit that will be able to get slightly better scores here. They can maybe hit the graphics score, just go over 12,000. So for the wattage it runs, this is very good. CPU score again, really impressed with that. And TimeSpy Extreme, just over 5,000 for the graphics score, and the CPU score there of 7,500. So this is still really good. So yes, it can game, but for accelerating 3D applications, video editing, stuff like that is going to be excellent. Speaking of excellent, Cinebench R23. This is very good, getting over 2,000 points with our single core performance and an impressive 23,615 for the multi-core score. That's great. The ProArt 16 does come with some very fast SSDs. Now, because we've got BitLocker enabled, these speeds have been affected. So these should be around about 7,000 reads and writes sequentials each, but that's the impact that having them encrypted does have. Now, we've got 2 terabyte PCIe 4.0 drives in this. So 4 terabytes in total, the 64 gigabytes. Spec-wise, it is certainly very powerful and got a lot of storage available to us, which is great. Now, included software, just like the ZenBook S16 that I recently just covered, that there is, of course, my Asus, and we do not get McAfee antivirus pre-installed. Don't get anything nagging us to subscribe, so that is really good. They have some of their own software. Now, because of the time of this video, and it's getting a bit long anyway, I can't really go into a lot of depth, but we've got StoryCube, and you have MuseTree. So you've got some areas there for inspiration that you can use for creative purposes to help you. Very useful software, and perhaps maybe in another video I'll go into it in a little bit more detail. Otherwise it's going to just take up too much room, but there's some included software that is quite useful, and I will show you briefly this. My Asus is where you will find all of your software updates under system update there. There's already been a few. There's been 2 BIOSes that have been updated with this particular model here. And that is good to see that they're pushing ahead with changes, any bug fixes and whatnot. And then your typical drivers that are always going to be updated normally every month or so, that you'll get those updates from AMD, say, use chipset drivers, graphics you can see listed there. That's all straightforward stuff. Now, device settings, again, I'll just quickly go over this. We've got battery care, so you can limit the battery to, I believe it's 80% that you can turn that on. Yes, you can see 80%. Your operating modes. Now, I've been, as I mentioned, running in performance mode. You can also run a manual mode that you can tweak those fans right down to make this basically completely silent if you want. You also got that whisper mode there too. GPU mode, you can put it into eco mode. So it's just going to be using the integrated graphics, so the Radeon 890M optimized, so that is basically a mux switch there, so it will be a lot faster, disables the integrated graphics there, so good options to have there. You can allocate more memory to the GPU, this being the integrated graphics, and no point because we have the discrete graphics, so that's kind of a setting that I don't think anyone's going to be using there. Settings for the microphones and noise cancellation, your different sound modes, basically just like an equalizer, volume boost. This one I really do like. So OLED care, you can even get it to hide the taskbar, although Windows will do that itself. There's settings for the taskbar you can enable, but it's just turning that on via this menu instead of you having to go through the taskbar menu. OLED flicker-free dimming, splendid color modes, and there's a target mode here too as well. Wi-Fi Smart Connect, touchpad, function keys. a few other things in there. So there's a lot in there, and that's just a very quick summary of the included software you do get with the ProArt 16. One other piece of software that is specific to this laptop, or well, the ProArt series, is we have the Creator Hub, ProArt Creator Hub, and you'll see that you got the control panel. You can see all your specific system information. That is nice and handy. Color control, so this is an important one if you're going to be doing some color grading and whatnot. I highly recommend, of course, that you calibrate the screen with something like a Spider X Pro, which I do for my stuff. But you have options in here to start color calibration. You have the color options here for color gamut. You can go along and select, for example, sRGB if you work with that, or you want DCI-P3. You're able to select that too as well. We've got our control settings and performance optimization too. You can even add applications to help boost and focus the performance and make it high priority. For example, Adobe Premiere Pro, to make sure it's always going to be very smooth and absolute best performance out of it, you can add it in here. And you even have options for, in the control settings here, to set what you want to use that dial for. So the dial on the touchpad, you can set it to be system. You've got your different modes and whatnot, and you can use it in things like Adobe Premiere Pro. So even though this is for creators or aimed at creators, we've only got a 60 Hertz panel on this, which is 4K, but it can game, of course, with an RTX 4070. You can see right now, this is Cyberpunk. I've set it to 1440p, and I have it on the high preset, and we are getting a playable frame rate. We're looking at 74.59 average frames per second with the high preset, and that, as I mentioned, is 1440p. Shadow of the Tomb Raider, you might hear some fan noise in the background. That's because the system is working hard here, and when you game, you certainly do hear it. So this is going to be tested, the in-game benchmark at 1440p, and it's the high preset. So a great result for 1440p. We got 144 frames per second on average from this in-game benchmark. The Witcher 3 here, so this is set to 1440p, high preset, and it's running just fine. We're getting around, you can see, close to 120 or so frames per second average. Dips down to about 104, but still all the time over 100 frames per second. So that's really good. And I expected this really from the RTX 4070. And what about a task that it's designed for? Video editing. This is 4K, this video that I do have in Adobe Premiere Pro. Now the timeline, I noticed no lag. It's super smooth with those NVIDIA CUDA cores boosting the performance, and export time's really good. So this is a 10-minute and 41-second video. It exported the whole thing with the YouTube preset 4K in just 2 minutes and 59 seconds. So very quick. If you're going to edit a lot of 4K video on this laptop, it handles it really well. But what about our thermals and the fan noise? So it packs a lot of power. The GPU did reach 70, almost 71 degrees Celsius. This is after the benchmarks, the gaming test. Ambient temperatures inside my studio here, about 25, 26 degrees. And then our CPU got up to 82 degrees. Just over. So thermals internally check out. However, just above the keyboard when gaming does get quite hot, almost 49 degrees Celsius. So that's quite toasty to the touch. Fan noise, I'm going to give you a sample now, which is worst case scenario. This is running a benchmark in the performance mode at 70 watts. This is how loud it is when you push it hard, but also how loud it is when you game. Now, like I do in most of my videos, I tried to test out Linux. It's Linux Manjaro, and unfortunately, it failed to boot. Well, I got to the first screen to select the open source drivers, but from then on in, it was just a blank black screen. So issues with the graphics drivers, I think.
Okay, so we've established in this video that it's a very powerful laptop. I showed you the fan noise, what the speakers are like. There are a lot of things to love about this laptop. For someone like me, this is almost perfect. I've got the SD card slot, I've got the Asus dial pad there, built into the touchpad, which is very handy for video editors like myself, and you can even use it to control system settings. Fantastic screen with one big but it's only 60 Hertz, which is a real shame. If this was 120 Hertz, it would be even better, of course. Then you have a nice, really smooth desktop. It doesn't bother me too much, but it may some people, of course. Let me know in the comments. Can you live with 60 Hertz, even though it's a fantastic screen, a 4K screen, or not? The battery life, 90 watt hours. All right, in my testing with light work, you're looking at about 9 hours, 8 hours or so. That's 30% brightness, and of course, just using the Radeon 890Ms and not the discrete graphics, because that's a huge energy user, that one, up to 105 watts. Now, if you're editing video off the DC power, then it's only going to go for about 3 hours, 4 hours or so. The same with gaming. It won't be too long because it's just going to burn through it. It's basically like then a gaming laptop. Not that people will be really buying this for gaming. It's aimed at professionals. And I think it covers all of the bases there, really. So the only con, as I said, is that 60 Hertz with the screen. There is another that when you push it really hard, but only really when gaming, it gets very hot at the top here. And I did measure up to 48 degrees Celsius. So that is a bit toasty there. The fan you do here, and you can put it into the silent mode when it's on the battery light right now. I'll just hold this up close to my lav mic. Yeah, there's no fan noise. It's off. So it does have a zero fan mode, 0 decibel mode, until it really needs it. Then the fan will come on for a little bit, then it turns off again. But all up, this laptop, absolutely love it. If you're a video editor, photo editor, someone that's into CAD work or 3D design, you need a screen like this, you need this kind of power, then the ProArt P16, I think, is definitely worth a look. Thank you so much for watching this review.